Thank you very much for coming. I'm very excited to talk to you about the Chinese design. The reason is that I realize more and more often I get contacted by Western companies that they want to either design a website for the Chinese audiences, or they want to adapt their existing English or any Latin alphabet website into the one using Chinese characters. I think there are some good reasons behind it. So this year, the population in China reached almost 1.4 billion, and that is nearly 20% of the world population. And earlier in 2013, the Chinese online retail market sale reached more than $300 billion, making China the world's largest online retail market. Only 3 years later, the number has been doubled. So on the Singles Day, in case you're not familiar with Singles Day, it's very similar to Boxing Day. On this day, the retailers give very good discounts to their buyers to increase sale. So in 2014, on the Singles Day, the Alibaba Group holding sold $9.3 billion worth of products in just a day. And a year later, they beat the $9.3 billion record in just 12 hours. According to a report from Forrester earlier in 2015, February, they predict that the Chinese retail market sale in 2019 will reach $1 trillion. So that's a lot of money, and the business owners know the huge potential in the Chinese market, and they know the importance of offering their content in Chinese. And for us designers, especially for Western designers, you will be facing many challenges when you're designing for the Chinese market. First of all, designing for the Chinese market is not as easy as just translating your text content into Chinese. You also have to know the culture, aesthetics, the technology, psychology, and many more other aspects. Take this one, for example. So this is a photo taken in the Chinese stock market. And if you see this, everything's green, you probably won't be very happy because right now, all the prices are dropping. So in the Chinese stock market, the red color indicates the prices are rising, and green color means the prices are dropping. So that's the opposite of the Western standard. The reason is the red color in Chinese culture represents luck and fortune and the good things. Still, there are a lot of Chinese people using Internet Explorer and some early versions. And some of them are using some local browsers like 2345, you probably never heard of. Internet Explorer 6 used to be very popular, but luckily now they're only 3%. But also that means 43 million people. So as the Chinese, your potential audiences, more than half of them are still using Windows 7. And 1/3 of them are using Windows XP. Of course, this is kind of the latest data in the past 6 months. Some of the UI elements can be quite different too. So this one is Taobao.com. It's the biggest e-commerce website in China. And as you can see, there are 2 QR codes on this one screen. And also it's above the fold. So the QR code in China really plays an important role. You can log in some website with QR code. You can download an app. It goes to some mysterious link. You can even pay your dinner with just a QR code. Another example of the QR code, right in the middle of the screen. And this one is the biggest search engine in China, Baidu.com. It's visually quite similar to the Google, but the difference is there are 2 QR codes on the footer. And if you also notice, there's this ICP number over here. So what is this ICP number? If you come to almost all the Chinese websites, you'll be able to see there's an ICP and there's a row of numbers. The ICP stands for Internet Content Provider. So any website that operates in China or hosted in China, you have to have the ICP number. Without the number, you can't basically have a website because they probably will just shut it down without any notice. And this is a screenshot I took from the government website where you can apply for the ICP number. And you can see it's not very easy, is it? But those things you can learn by doing some research. There are other challenges that are even bigger, and you can't really learn just by Googling them. So China is a very big country, and it's also a very diverse country. You can hardly say, okay, my target audience is all the Chinese people. Take the spoken Chinese as an example. There are many Chinese dialects, and most commonly used in the mainland China is Mandarin. That is the yellow area. The gray area are the places that don't even speak Chinese, like Tibetan or Mongolian or Korean. I think some of you must have heard of Cantonese, but as you can see, the Cantonese is not in the list. So where is it? In fact, the Cantonese is one dialect of the Yue language, and that is the blue area on the bottom. I come from that area, so I put a red pin there. It's called Jinan, and quite close to Beijing. Obviously, I speak Mandarin, and for me, without any proper training, I can't really understand any other dialects. So we can't really talk with our own dialect. However, there are two types of written Chinese, the traditional Chinese and simplified. They look quite similar, but if you look closer, the simplified Chinese, some of the characters have less strokes, so it looks less busy and less dense. In Taiwan, Hong Kong, and much of the Chinese overseas community, they use traditional Chinese. And in the mainland China and Singapore, we use simplified Chinese. So that means, although we can't really talk to each other because we have different dialects, we are able to just write to each other. And for example, Taiwan, although there are many places in Taiwan that speak Mandarin or the Taiwanese style of Mandarin, we don't write the same way. And that's kind of similar. But why are there two types of written Chinese? Isn't one enough and enough complicated? Well, that brings us back to the development of Chinese characters. So this is an example of the character horse. And as you can see, as time goes by, the character becomes more and more abstract. So the second last is the traditional Chinese, and the last one is simplified Chinese. What happened was about 60 or 70 years ago, there are many Chinese people who don't know how to read or write Chinese. So in order to increase the literacy rate, Chairman Mao decided to make the character design a lot simpler and easier to learn. And you probably already know the character set is very large. But how many characters are there? Well, honestly, I don't know, because there are too many, and the new ones just keep developing all the time. But one of the biggest collection of Chinese characters has more than 100,000 characters, and it's called Yiti Zi Dictionary. For a standard Chinese character set, there should be more than 10,000 unique characters. And among those, more than 3,000 are commonly used. In the font, just for a simplified Chinese Pro font, it needs to contain more than 20,000 characters, which means the font file size are incredibly huge too. And that makes it almost impossible for web font embedding. So sadly, the option for us are the system fonts. But as you can see, there are not too many choices, and each different operation system has different fonts. So what they do, a lot of websites doesn't specify any font styles. Instead, they just let the browser choose whatever is best available. Of course, this caused some problems like this. So the one on this side looks kind of like a serif font, and on the other side, it's similar to serif font. But in fact, they are the exactly same website, just in a different browser. And sometimes this happens. So when the font the browser chooses doesn't have all the characters that needs to be displayed in that page, some of the characters are rendered into a fallback font, and that's not very pretty. But that doesn't mean we don't have Chinese font. In fact, many of the Chinese fonts are beautiful, and it's a huge fun to play with typography too. Well, this is one of the work I did a while ago in collaboration with Tobias van Schneider, and we designed this very abstract work with Chinese characters. So for us designers, we really want the freedom to use the font we want, to be creative. So the solution we come up with are flash images or icon fonts. Of course, there are many problems with this, like it just takes more time to produce, they are not dynamic, it's harder to maintain, they don't support selecting, copying, searching, or translating, and it requires more data downloading and bandwidth than it's supposed to, and it just have accessibility issues. Recent years, there's a new technology called dynamic subsetting, which allows you to create a dynamic kit. And the dynamic kit JavaScript loads in the browser, and it will detect whatever character you are using on that specific page. And so you will just need to download those characters. And that makes the font file size a lot smaller and loads a lot faster. There are many services already having the Chinese web font. Thanks to them, now it's finally possible to use web font for Chinese websites. But that doesn't make website design easier, because working with Chinese typography can be quite difficult. In our Latin alphabet, there are normal, italic, and oblique font style. The difference between italic and oblique is essentially the italic characters are manually designed, and they look smooth and beautiful, but oblique is a distortion of the normal font style. In Chinese characters, we do have normal, it's called 正体. We don't have italic. We do have oblique, but again, it's a distortion, and they look extremely awkward and ugly. So you really see them anywhere. And that means there's not too much freedom to play with the paragraph format. And some of the characters look extremely complex, like this one. This one is pronounced as ta, and it means flying dragon. There is 48 strokes in one single character. In comparison, there is a letter G. So when they both set in a really tiny size, letter G is still legible. But the Chinese character, it just become a black dot. And unlike the English alphabets, there is no uppercase, lowercase, no baseline, no ascenders or descenders in the Chinese character. In a paragraph, there is no space for word separation or hyphenation. So when the text box gets more narrow, you can basically break the line at any point, except there are few characters that's not allowed to use at starting of the line or end of the line. So in old times, Chinese was read from top to bottom and then from right to left. But then as the language is evolving, now we read them from left to right and top to bottom. But the thing is, sometimes it gets really confusing, like this photo that's taken on the street somewhere in China. Just take a guess. What is the reading direction here? Just get some water. So, in fact, there's more than one reading direction here. Some are from like reading horizontally from left to right. Some are read from left to right. So unless you can actually understand them, it's very difficult for a Westerner to know what even the reading direction is. Also, sometimes I get complaints from Westerner friends that they say, oh, the Chinese design are not good, they're ugly. And they always compare something like this. It's so minimal and elegant and beautiful with this. Or this. Or this. And what they say is, those websites look really busy, and they look cluttered, and there are a lot of links. There are many flash banners, the images are really small, and overall, they look outdated. There are some good reasons for this. Because compared to many Western countries, the internet was introduced to China a lot later, so the design is not as mature. And the internet connection speed in China is not that fast. I mean, it is changing and getting better, but it's still below the world average. So that's why you don't really see the big, beautiful full-screen image banners or like full-screen video playing on the background. That's why the images are quite small. Also, it takes a lot of effort to type in Chinese. So here, I was trying to type in the character shi. So I just type in SHI, and then I get this list of characters. I have to find the one I want, go there and select it in order to input the one character I want. And that's why most of the Chinese people prefer just to click on the text links rather than type and search. But just hold on a second. Is this kind of cluttered design a Chinese thing? So what about the social media website you're visiting 10 times a day? And what about the news websites you're visiting every morning? And those online magazines that you just keep exploring? And even this. Linscott.com. This is one of the most successful online car renting business in the UK, and I mean, it's even more crazy. But those kind of busy designs, they makes you feel that there are a lot of possibilities, choices, and entertainment values to be explored. And don't judge them by their cover, because they do a great job to solve their users' problems. And I mean, essentially, that's what really matters for design. And I have to admit that for a Chinese audience, we are quite familiar with the busy design, and we do have a higher tolerance. But that doesn't mean we like that. In fact, recent years, I see more and more Chinese design. They look more beautiful and minimal. Like this one. Or this one. Or this. And this one. And this one. Well, I'm not saying that they are the best designs or they are they are very creative. But I mean, you can see the difference, the change of the design trend in the Chinese design market. I think I'm very glad to see the change, and I can't wait to see what the Chinese design will be happening in the future couple of years. And I think if you have a chance to design for a Chinese market, go for it. Why not? There's so much things to learn, and I'm sure you'll like it. But even if you're not, please do enjoy the privilege you have designing for the Western market. So, if you have any questions, please make sure to tweet me at Logotype. And I'd like to say thank you to Opera, who sponsored my trip to Amsterdam, to Bruce Lawson, he mentored me for my talk, and Code Motion for the opportunity. And thank you for your attention.